2022, the population of New York City is 40 million people. Through loudspeakers, residents are instructed to return to their apartments within an hour. Thorne lives in one of the buildings. On TV, they are advertising innovative food sourced from the sea. However, it has become very scarce. Solomon turns off the TV and tells Thorne about new crimes since Thorne works as a detective. Thorne writes down the most important evidence while munching on a cracker, which Solomon calls tasteless trash. The lights start to dim, and Solomon recalls that in his youth, all the food was delicious and high quality, but due to foolish experiments, scientists poisoned the water, and the soil became contaminated, leading to the extinction of common animals. After this, he starts pedaling to charge a small battery that powers a light bulb. Tonight, Thorne has the night shift, and before stepping out onto the streets, he has to squeeze between people who don't have homes of their own. All the streets are covered in a toxic green fog, and due to the lack of gasoline, cars are now being used as apartments. Donovan approaches Gilbert with a criminal job for him. Meanwhile, Shirley is playing on a computer gifted by William, one of the richest people in the world whose wealth keeps him shielded from the planet's pollution problems. Their conversation is interrupted by the bodyguard Kep as their supplies have run out and they need to go to the store. Shirley wants something special, and the vendor shows her a real piece of meat. Late at night, Gilbert makes holes for his feet and climbs onto private property. He manages to slip in unnoticed and break into William's apartment. William asks what Gilbert wants, and Gilbert responds that the people who gave him the job no longer want to work with William, and to cover their tracks, William will have to die. The murder case is handed to Thorne. After questioning the head of security, as well as Shirley and Kep, Thorne proceeds to examine the body. He takes the opportunity to sample some expensive alcohol. He also orders Kep to leave and detail where he was and what he was doing. While no one is around, Thorne turns on the water and thoroughly washes himself. He stuffs items he finds useful into a pillowcase to take home. Shirley blames herself for William's death. She believes that if she had stayed home, he might have survived, but Kep is certain that she would have been eliminated too. The sanitation crew arrives at the apartment and takes the body for transport to the incineration plant. The sanitation team gives Thorne a lift home, where he shows his friend everything he took from the rich man's house. Solomon is amazed by what he sees, especially the bottle of alcohol. But he doesn't yet know that Thorne also took a piece of meat. A new day begins. Thorne arrives at the precinct. Chief Hatcher plans to find Thorne an assistant to help solve the case, but Thorne insists that he'll handle it alone, after which he describes William's assassination. He's sure it was a hit, with Kep being the prime suspect. Setting up surveillance on Kep, Thorne discovers that Kep frequently visits Marta. According to her, they've been seeing each other for 4 years, and there are too many expensive items in her apartment for a bodyguard to afford, even if he works for a wealthy man. Upon returning home, Thorne and Solomon enjoy real food. Solomon even prepares a dish from his childhood. Thorne now understands what humanity has lost thanks to the books he brought home. Solomon learns that William, along with the governor of New York, created the company Salian, which supplies the world with nutritious food bricks. Before leaving, Thorne gives Solomon a spoon from Marta's home to find out what it was smeared with. Solomon quickly identifies it as strawberry, which costs a fortune, further solidifying Thorne's theory. Thorne shares his suspicions with his boss, who is, at that moment, speaking with Gilbert. To maintain good relations with the governor, the boss is willing to do whatever is asked of him. Thorne visits Shirley. She was never told much, but she knows the names of Donovan's friends, including Governor Santini. An employee, Charles, bursts into the apartment and starts yelling at the girls. Thorne orders him to stop and stands up for them, pretending that he had called them in for questioning. Charles realizes that it's not true, but he doesn't want to argue with the policeman, so he leaves. Shirley thanks Thorne for helping her friends and offers him to stay until the morning. Thorne couldn't refuse such an offer. After some time, he arrives at the church where all the refugees are gathering. It turns out the priest knew William. Thorne wants to know what they talked about, but the priest cannot help, as the truth would kill him. Thorne then returns to the station. Hatcher immediately informs him that William's case is closed, but Thorne refuses to falsify his report. This case is far more serious than it seems, and he must see it through to the end. Hatcher hints that the people above want to close the case, but even so, Thorne refuses to sign the document. Meanwhile, the governor is informed that a policeman refused to close the case, and to make sure the priest doesn't reveal any secrets, Kep is sent to eliminate him. Today, Thorne is supposed to patrol the streets. Among the crowd are people sent to kill him. Luckily for him, a riot breaks out and trucks arrive to suppress it, forcing people into their beds. One of the trucks takes out Gilbert, though he manages to wound Thorne in the process. This becomes the final straw, and Thorne sets up an ambush for Kep. Though Kep didn't give anyone away, Thorne warns that if they continue to follow him, he'll return and eliminate them all. Afterward, late at night, he visits Shirley. Solomon visits a library where his old friends are. He brings them books with his research and dresses his wounds. Thorne must return to work. Before leaving, he asks to turn on all the cameras and stay inside. However, Shirley informs him that a new resident is arriving today. Since Shirley is essentially furniture, she will have to live with him. Meanwhile, the librarians conclude that William had uncovered the corporation's secrets, and to prevent him from revealing them to the world, they decided to eliminate him. But before they can go to the Supreme Council, they must gather all the evidence. When Thorne returns to his apartment, he finds a note from Solomon, who has decided to go home. It turns out he is planning to end his life. Thorne rushes to help him. At the disposal company, every person is shown recordings of the previous world. Though outsiders are not allowed in, Thorne drives out the worker, opens the shutters, and becomes a witness to the old world. In his final moments, Solomon tells Thorne everything he has learned and asks him to find proof. Thorne climbs into a truck transporting bodies and infiltrates the factory, uncovering the horrifying truth about the production of the food bricks. The marine fauna was just a cover. Thorne manages to escape from the factory and calls Shirley. He asks her to forget about him and live as before, as he doesn't want her to die. Afterward, he calls Hatcher for help, but men emerge from the building and a shootout begins. Thorne is wounded but manages to reach the church and set up an ambush, eventually eliminating Kep. Hatcher arrives at the sound of the shots. Thorne tells him that the sea is practically dead, and the food bricks are now made from people, but the company is hiding this information. The company's future plans involve turning the residents into livestock, which can be bred and processed into bricks. Hatcher promises to tell the truth, but that's where the movie ends.